welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that says, hey, the Raiders are welcome to keep picking off the Seahawks plate as far as I'm concerned. We will talk about Clint Kubiak, the last, with this coaching cycle, you never know. The last head coaching hire that we know needs to happen as of right now has happened. He's going to the Raiders. We'll talk about that. We are also going to give you our dingers and stingers for the week. We're doing that on this episode as well. We will also, of course, recap Super Bowl 60. So lots to talk about today. It's a bittersweet episode because we get to recap the Super Bowl, but football season's over now. It's officially over. There's no more until, next, preseason begins in August. So, yeah, really tough times, but a little bittersweet episode here. But let's start the episode by looking ahead a little bit, talking about something that will be, before we go back to the Super Bowl, Clint Kubiak, head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So, the Pete Carroll debacle, obviously we know that ended when he was let go by the Raiders. They parted ways. That did not go the way anyone expected. It's smart to get Pete Carroll out of there because he wasn't trying to be the coach of a rebuild team anyway. So they've gone with another former Seahawks staffer. So, weeks of speculation led to this. We almost talked about it on last week's show because it was so everyone knew it was going to happen already, but we waited till it was official. So he's been introduced. He's got the press conference. He flew to Las Vegas for the press conference, flew back to Seattle for the parade, and then flew back to Las Vegas the next day to start putting together his staff. So he signed a 5-year contract to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So my first question is, whenever this happens, I always have this question. I think about it myself. Would you have taken this job, or would you have stayed in Seattle to maybe try to keep winning a little more? Whenever a coordinator leaves a Super Bowl winner, I always ask myself that question. So I wanted to ask it of you guys about Clint.
It's so hard to say because at the end of the day, if you're in a professional sport and you're a coach, right? Being a head coach is kind of the pinnacle of what you can be. And for a guy who maybe hasn't had a ton of opportunities to try his hand at this, or maybe won't foresee a ton of opportunities, this is a cool opportunity. It's hard to say, that he should stay or he shouldn't stay, but it's just being a head coach is so rare. There are 32 guys who get to say that they are an NFL head coach, and to be one of those guys, regardless of the team, regardless of how well it performs, regardless, there is just a special. I think there's got to be something special about being able to say that you are one of those guys, and so would I want the Raiders job? Not particularly, but if you were to ask me in a vacuum if I wanted to be a head coach of an NFL team, despite them potentially being the worst team in the NFL, I would probably be like, yeah, I think I would like that, So for a guy like Clint Kubiak, I mean, maybe he's also one of those go-getters who's like, hey, if I can turn them around, it just means that I get more praise. So if you're the team that can turn around a team like the Raiders or the Browns or, one of these kind of joke teams, I mean, look at Dan Campbell. That dude will be immortal in Detroit now because he's made them into a winning culture. To be the guy that turns around a franchise, and especially a franchise with the fan base that I was about to call them Oakland, that the Raiders have, you're going to be immortal if you can do it. So, he's already got some family legacy. Why not try and make his own?
Yeah, the question being worded, would you have taken this job? No, I wouldn't have, because I wouldn't want that added responsibility in a worse organization. But I'm also clearly not built for, the world that this is, right? That, it's always what's the next better job can I get, that's just kind of how it seems. And you're right, Matt, who knows? Like if he stays in Seattle, is he still a hot name next year? Maybe, but like it's not a guarantee. And so when a head coaching job is in front of you and that's rare, you don't even know like what jobs will be open in a year. So like I understand capitalizing on that. Sounds like he was also like the Cardinals' first choice, and then they I don't know what exactly happened, if that was his choice not to go there or what. But if it was his choice, like it speaks to me how the Cardinals are being viewed right now, because like in my head, the Raiders are like bottom of the barrel. But hey, you have that number 1 pick, so that's definitely something. But yeah, I don't know. Like both jobs right now, looking up at the other 3 teams in your division, doesn't seem like the most desirable place to be.
Got the number 1 pick, but you also, I mean, you have to imagine the sway that like the historical side of them have, because the Raiders are one of the historical teams of the NFL, at least the way that they're viewed. And on top of that, you're working with Tom Brady now. I mean, that's got to play a part, as much as people maybe don't want to admit that or think about that. Like he is a part owner, and he has very clearly been a part of certain decisions, and he makes his opinion known to the Raiders organization of what he thinks the best is. And so there's probably some sway there with the types of players, the types of coaches, the types of situations that come about, of like, do you get a little bit of that Brady magic that can come in? And Pete doesn't seem like the guy who would take advantage of such a thing. But maybe Clint Kubiak will. We'll see.
Yeah, Kubiak, I think he's a good fit here, but when we sort of talk a little bit in the offseason about, I'm sure, the Raiders are going to come up a lot. They have the number 1 pick and all that. But so I want to think early thoughts on how, the Kubiak scheme of like, he wants to run the ball a lot. He got a lot of use out of tight ends like AJ Barner and while he was healthy, Elijah Arroyo in Seattle this year. He got a lot of use out of them, both from a assisting in the run game perspective and also in the pass game. So I'm thinking about Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers. What do you think the impact of the way Kubiak does things on offense is going to be for those 2 guys specifically? Two guys that the Raiders really need to step up.
Yeah, I mean, and I would even add in a few more names, namely, Michael Mayers is still there. And people forget that he was, I believe, a 2nd-round pick out of Notre Dame. He was seen as a very good tight end. He is still actively there just behind Brock Bowers. And like you said, you mentioned both of those tight ends. We could see a move to 12 personnel for sure with the Raiders, and moving towards run-heavy sets, utilizing both tight ends, being able to run the ball. But I think one of the best things that I saw out of Clint Kubiak was the fact that, one, he gave his number 1 target a wide open route tree. We'd seen it in the past with specifically guys in Seattle with like Shane Waldron, where JSN and DK Metcalf and some of these guys were limited to very, very small route trees where they would only reach certain parts of the field. And this year, if you look at the route trees spread out from the season, there's like not an inch of grass that JSN did not run on at some point. And so, looking at the situation in Vegas, a guy like Brock Bowers, I mean, a tight end, he's going to be a wide receiver 1. I mean, he's going to be on the move. He's going to be out everywhere. He could be in the backfield. He could be in line. He could be in the slot. Like, I foresee him being everywhere. And then Seattle, one of their biggest weaknesses over the past few years has been that offensive line. This year, not quite a weakness, not necessarily like a huge strength of theirs, but they obviously drafted Gray Zabel. That helped a lot, but I feel like he got a lot of value out of the like offensive line that he had, and that led to a lot of success. And when you can kind of scheme up this system that allows your offensive line to get into more advantageous blocking situations, obviously that pays dividends. And I feel like the Seahawks were so talented with all these skill position guys, but the one thing that always plagued them was this offensive line. And it was always something that the past few years might come back to bite them. And this year, overall, I mean, they maybe had their small moments, but every offensive line does. They played really well, I thought. And so yeah, I think, we could see a big resurgence from Genty, and we could see a huge boost for Brock Bowers, for Michael Myers. And so I'm interested to see, the rumor mill that doesn't feel like a rumor is that they are going to just sit at 1 and take Mendoza. Well, we're going to have to see, because I think that the trade market and the free agency market could really open up a lot of options, because, what did Clint Kubiak just have success with? A reclamation project quarterback, a guy who was a previous top pick, a guy who they were able to sign to a middle market deal. Sam is the 18th highest paid quarterback as it stands today. And so, could we see them be a team that goes out and actually signs somebody, and then all of a sudden they have this bountiful pick at number 1 where they can say to the league, any team that needs a quarterback, hey, come trade up to number 1, get the one guy that we're pretty sure is going to be good. And, they could get a pretty big haul back for that. So I think they're going to be in a very, very, advantageous position for this offseason, especially given some of the names that are out there who could be available at pretty discounted rates at the quarterback position. So I love the move. I mean, good for Clint Kubiak. He gets his shot at being a head coach. Sad for Seattle. Obviously, he was great there. Hopefully, they can find another guy to fill in. But yeah, I think this is cool for him.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me. I'm familiar with his father, Gary. He was Super Bowl winning player and coach with the Broncos, and Clint coached with the Broncos as well. And, before this year, I was not particularly high on him. The Broncos offense in the years that Clint Kubiak was involved, not super good. He was also with the Vikings for a spell. He was with the Saints the year before he signed with the Seahawks. Like, these are not teams that you're like, oh, yeah, like that offense just really blew me away. Now, that doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to being a head coach. Like, it's not always a one-to-one, conversion when it's like, are you a, successful coordinator? Then you're going to be a successful head coach. That's not exactly how it works, but I do find it interesting, and I think it's it's a trend with the coaching cycles all the time. But for him to come and have one really, really good year and obviously win the Super Bowl, to turn that into being the guy to be a head coach. I mean, granted, there was 10 openings, so this year there's a lot of guys that were shuffled around. I don't know. I don't know what to think about it, because it seems like things with the Raiders hardly ever work out these days, and it seems like, well, if the devil's advocate to my argument is Pete Carroll has a super long track record, and that didn't work either. So, I don't know. Obviously, I can't predict the future, but I don't foresee the Raiders being super good this year. Maybe they won't be the worst team in football like they were this last year, but I just don't know. Whoever the coach is, I don't like this situation very much, besides having the number 1 pick. And, we'll see what they do with that. I assume they'll just take Fernando Mendoza. I don't know, if they'll get creative with that at all, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about the Raiders situation as a whole. I'm not fully sold on Kubiak, and if I was him, like I said earlier, maybe I would just stay in Seattle, where obviously it was a good fit for him, and it was a good vibe, and things went as well as they possibly could have. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
All right. Best of luck, happy trails, et cetera, to Clint Kubiak. Again, it's just it's more another season where I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Raiders a little bit because I'm curious to see how he does over there. But okay, so we've looked forward a little bit with, the new head coach for the Raiders, what he might bring for them next season. But this season did end on Sunday in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 60 took place, and the Seattle Seahawks defeated the New England Patriots 29-13. Most of that scoring happened pretty late in the game. As a Seahawk fan, I must once again apologize to the neutral viewer for an uncompetitive Super Bowl, perhaps more so this time because even the team that won didn't score all that much, until the very end. But, so our bad. But, that's how it went down. So we're going to go through the game a little bit and talk about some of the most interesting things that happened. But just to start, generally speaking, did anything surprise you about how this game went from either side, Seattle or New England?
I think I think the thing that surprised me the most is I think maybe I had not given the New England defense enough credit. I thought that purely based off of how bad the offenses kind of were playing in the playoffs. I mean, we saw maybe the worst single game postseason performance of all time from CJ Stroud. We saw a Chargers team that could not muster like a single iota of momentum. And I attributed that to a lot of injuries. I attributed that to a lot of, outside factors. It turns out that Patriots defense is really good. Like they've built up a good defense there. This was the first offense that they played in this postseason where I was like, oh man, this is an offense. It would have been the Broncos, but they played a Jarrett Stidham led Broncos. And so this is the first team that I was like, man, this is a legit offense. Let's see how they actually perform. And you know what? They showed out. And they showed out pretty well. Granted, you look at the total of the game and you're like, oh, wow, Kenneth Walker, 160 yards and yada, yada, yada. Could have been more if, they didn't have that last touchdown run called back. But if you watched the full game like a little maniac, you would have saw like the offense wasn't like moving the ball. He had 160 yards, but he also had like a trillion touches. And every single drive was a minimum of 2 handoffs to start the drive. Like it was a pretty great showing from the Patriots defense. And so I'd say that was my biggest surprise of the game. But I pretty much expected this to be a defensive game for the most part. I just didn't think it would be this extreme.
Yeah, on the trend of like, I wasn't surprised by the overall result, but what did surprise me was exactly how bad it got for Drake May. I didn't think him or the Patriots offense would do very well in this game. They had not done well in the playoffs to that point. But like there were plays where like he wasn't about to get sacked. He wasn't like there was an open receiver and he would just throw it like 3 yards too short. And like, it just wasn't the Drake May that almost won MVP. You know what I mean? And we can get into quality of opponent and blah, blah, blah. But it was just like, that's a guy who was not ready for the moment. And so that surprised me. I kind of thought he had better makeup than that. Clearly he's got some talent. But yeah, I mean, like, if you're a Patriots fan, I would think you're still optimistic about the future of Drake May. But, boy, was that an awful, awful first playoff run for him. I mean, as bad as it can get while still getting to the Super Bowl. I think it was the worst.
It's the worst run by any quarterback to ever make it 3 games into a postseason.
Right, worse than the corpse of Peyton Manning. Right, that was like the second worst. And the Broncos won that Super Bowl. If people remember,
and it was by a pretty wide margin. It was like a negative 29 point something EPA. Like bad.
And so that and granted, his offensive line did not play well at all either. But like what I was saying is like that, there were certain plays where it's like, that is just like that last interception he threw.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that ball supposed to be going? Like that.
You could make an argument he was seeing ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah. So and this is not to discredit the Seahawks defense, and this is not to, take away blame from the Patriots offensive line or their game plan or anything. Like, all of that is true, but there was just some plays where I was like, that's Drake May? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. There totally were those kind of moments. I think we can go in a couple different directions here, but the first direction I'll go is because it's what I was thinking the entire game as well, which is it was kind of the only thing that people talked about that gave the Patriots a chance, but I still think that the pass rush was undersold. Like in the run up to the game, like I didn't watch a lot of Patriots this year. Obviously, why would I? I don't really like it. It didn't really matter to me, and so I wasn't aware of what those guys were getting up to. And I mean, credit to them. It's a really gutsy game plan that they had coming into this game, which is we are going to send as many bodies after Sam Darnold every play as possible. And I kind of like the risk there, obviously, is that you saw it on one play very early. I can't remember how early it was, but one play very early after maybe within the first few drives for Seattle, maybe like the third one or something. There was a play where they had, a blitz on, as they did often in this game, and they had a defensive end covering JSN on that play because they were sending corners to try to surprise blitz. And when they did that, I thought that Seattle would be able to make them pay for that, and Seattle just wasn't. Like all day in the passing game, really able to make the Patriots pay for that how aggressive they were playing up front. And so that was a big part of the reason why the Seattle offense never got into a rhythm, was because the way the Seahawks offense has thrived, at least in the passing game, is by that very good staying on schedule type of plays where you go to JSN for 5 or 6, then you go to Cooper Kupp for 3, and then you hand it off to Ken for another 2 or 3, and then you start on first down again, and you just do it all. And that's how they've had success in the postseason for sure. And so going into this game, that's what the Patriots defense was able to take away from Seattle. So, but we talk about how this game, it was close for a really long time score-wise. Like, the score was very tight. And talking about the Patriots defense, I want to jump to Christian Gonzalez, right? Because, man, did that dude absolutely play out of his mind. And as much as a guy whose team just won the Super Bowl can feel bad for an opposing player, I really felt for Christian Gonzalez because he put it all out there. He had 2 amazing plays. So just wanted to take a second to acknowledge Christian Gonzalez here. Maybe we can talk a little bit about his impact on the game.
Yeah, dude. I mean, he is the up and coming epitome of a shutdown corner. And I say up and coming as if there's not other guys that are young and still getting it done. But he is that dude. And I think he kind of is what holds this Patriots defense together, is he's able to go across the field with any receiver and kind of lock them up. And, not that it mattered to Jason, but 2,000 yards for the season, including postseason, has only been done 2 times, right? That's only ever been done 2 times. He needed 30 something yards to become the 3rd player to ever do it, and he was unable to do it. We're talking about the guy who was the epitome of consistency this year, and every defense, every team was able to find those openings, and they were able to get those plays connected. He ended the game with only a handful of catches and 20 something yards, and it's that is the type of performance that Christian Gonzalez gave. And yeah, he had some of those big heroic moments, but it was also just the play in, play out ability to shut down someone who has kind of made every secondary in the league look foolish this year. So yeah, big props to Christian Gonzalez, and I think he kind of put the league on notice a little bit. I think maybe he wasn't being talked about as being that elite type of guy, and maybe that is because of the division they play in. Maybe it's because of the receivers he almost didn't have to cover. This year, I mean, the Jets didn't have anything. The Bills had nothing. Even just the games they played, there wasn't a ton of big names for him to cover, but he showed out in that Super Bowl. And if there was any glimmer of hope that they would have a chance to win, honestly, he would have been worthy of that Super Bowl MVP had they done it. I truly believe that.
Yeah. A little pat myself on the back moment, I guess. He was my X Factor last week when we talked about it, which is also, not very good look on me because I said if he played really well, the Patriots would have a chance, and he played really well, and the Patriots didn't seem to have a chance the whole game. But he showed out. He did great. He was really like the only Patriots player that seemed to, want to give his best performance in the biggest game of the year. So credit to him. And also, I'll take this chance to say my piece about the Broncos, because I saw some, on Twitter, some Broncos fans saying, "Oh, if this was us, whatever." And then Patriots fans were like, "Well, you would have lost worse because who's gonna Christian Gonzalez defended 2 touchdowns, those score." And it's like, dude, we have Pat Surtain. I'm sorry, we have Patrick Surtain on our team. And so I just want to take a quick shout out to the Broncos and say, I know for a certainty that Bo Nix would have played better in this game than Drake May played. I have no doubt in my mind that Bo Nix would have played better than Drake May in this game. That being said, I'm kind of glad that it wasn't us, because we probably would have lost anyways. And there's a bad history of going to your first Super Bowl and losing and then never getting back. And Jalen Hurts broke the trend last year, but in general, you go as a young quarterback to the Super Bowl and lose, you don't get another chance. And so on one hand, that's you got to take advantage of every chance. I'm certainly glad we didn't win with Jarrett Stidham having to be the quarterback in this game, because that would have been awful. But yeah, I mean that especially the first half when it was 9-0 Seahawks at halftime, and I'm watching Drake May play the worst football I've ever seen. I'm like, oh man, I'd love to know. Not that I thought Bo Nix would have gone off against the Seahawks or anything, but I would love to know what he would have looked like, because I don't think he makes those young man mistakes, even though he's from the same draft class. I think
he's 6 years older than him.
Yeah, he's older for sure, but
yeah,
he,
true.
He can make things happen when the pocket breaks down, and he is less inclined to make the really bad mistake. So I would have loved to see that. Obviously, it didn't happen, and by the end, I had no doubt in my mind that the Seahawks would have been Super Bowl champs regardless. So in a sense, I'm glad I didn't have to see that happen to me again. But given how bad the Patriots played, it was what a bummer, dude. What a bummer that Bo Nix broke his ankle. What a bummer that Josh Allen had a terrible game against the Broncos. There were so many teams I would have rather seen from the AFC come out and play in this Super Bowl. And we got what we got, and congrats to the Seahawks. I think they would have won regardless, but that was just...
Yeah, dude. I'm glad you brought up too the kind of the statistical anomaly of what it means to make a Super Bowl. I think a lot of people kind of are just yeah, man, and there's still this positive outlook of the Patriots are still going to be good, and they still got the young quarterback, and they got all this stuff. That can be true, and in the same hand, you look at all these young guys who've made it early, and it's like you said, it is a statistical anomaly to make a Super Bowl within your first 2 to 3 years, lose, and then ever make it back. Famously dating back to with Dan Marino and his inability to kind of, finish the job. he never won one. He never made it back. He never won a Super Bowl. And we look at Joe Burrow, we look at Lamar Jackson, we look at Josh Allen, we look at all these guys, and it's like there's so many talented quarterbacks who have made these Super Bowl runs and not finished the job, and then just never make their way back. And so it's going to be interesting to see, can the Patriots also kind of buck that trend, or are they going to fall back into this middling team that they were for the past few years? Because their team's not that much different than the team that won 4 games, if we're being super honest. They had a couple guys develop, and then they got a quarterback. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to win 4 games, but also I don't know that we see a 14-win team from the Patriots anytime soon. I'll say that. Especially going from a last place schedule to a first place schedule, because that strength of schedule, that helped them. That helped them a lot.
Yeah, it's going to hit next year for them in a different way, I think. But I will say this in defense of Drake May and perhaps maybe the entire Patriots offense, which is I think that how they performed in the Super Bowl is a good example of what's been true for most of the season, is that no one is as bad as they look when they're playing against Seattle's defense this year. The Seahawks defense, Mike McDonald calls it in a way, and there are so many players who are so talented on that defense, like supremely talented, that both of those things combined together, they can make you look a lot worse than you actually are. And so we've seen it with a ton of teams this year.
Shout out Matt Stafford, the correct MVP. I mean, if there was any doubt,
dude, imagine the narrative if Drake May had won the MVP, played like he did against the Seahawks right after Stafford went back-to-back games with like 800 yards, whatever touchdowns against the same defense. The one redeeming factor and all that. Stafford finally gets his MVP, deservingly so.
Yeah, totally. Just, to say that no one's as bad as they look. No one's really as bad as they look when they play the Seahawks defense this year. And so hopefully, Drake may come out next year and play against his first place schedule and show a little something. But okay, so let's move from the Patriots to the Seahawks. They're the winners, and the story of the game was sort of their defense and how well they played over the course of the game. I kind of am going to switch gears a little bit here, but maybe it'll still stay on the Seahawks defense when we have this talk. But Kenneth Walker won MVP. I think he deserves the MVP. He had a great game, even by Kenneth Walker standards. Like, it was really, really good. He broke off a couple of really explosive runs at key times to get the Seahawks in position to, kick all the field goals they kicked, because it wasn't the passing offense that was getting them in the red zone and in field goal range for Jason Myers. Like, it was Ken Walker's runs that were getting them there. And so, deserving MVP for sure. But I think there were a few players you could make a case for. So besides Ken Walker, who would you have given MVP to in this game? Is there another guy that you'd like to make a case for?
Dude, I mean, yeah, Jason Myers for sure. But to me, it's the kickers, both. I think Michael Dixon had 3 or 4 punts be downed within the 10-yard line or 5-yard line, another within the 15. Like, he constantly was just pinning them back against the goal line. And when you're already struggling, to then have to dig yourself out from the goal line just is that much more. And to be giving a defense like yours the ability to be playing in the opposite red zone essentially is such an advantage. Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't Ken Walker, I really believe it would have been one of the kickers. Like, the defense as a whole was certainly deserving, but the problem is I think it's the defense as a whole. I don't know who you pick randomly to represent that. I mean, I guess the Super Bowl they won against the Broncos, was it Malcolm Smith won the MVP, and mostly off of him having the return touchdown. So maybe you set the precedent, and Nwosu gets it because he had the return touchdown. I don't know. Maybe that's the precedent you set, but I think those kickers were so deserving, man. Like they had a killer game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jason Myers is funny because like he scored the most points in the game, but none of the field goals were like particularly like bombs or anything like that.
Right.
And then Michael Dixon, yeah, he had a great game as a punter. I can't imagine the discourse if a punter won Super Bowl MVP. So I think you got to shout out the defense. I think they found their token defensive, Super Bowl MVP the last time the Seahawks won. I think they could have done the same thing here, but I think for me, if I'm going to pick one guy from that defense, it was Devin Witherspoon. He was all over the field. It's hard because like the stat lines never look like much from the defensive side of things, but like if you watch the game, you saw his involvement in that Seahawks victory for sure.
Yeah. Everywhere you watched, you saw Devin Witherspoon.
Yeah, the big question, which we didn't really talk about on last week's show because by the time we recorded, it was already confirmed that he was going to play anyway, and that it wasn't that bad. But the big question for the Seahawks going into the game was if Nick Emenwari isn't at 100%, how is the defense going to perform? Who's going to be able to step up in that way? If he can't speed rush after the quarterback as much as they like him to, if he can't keep up with Hunter Henry, or if he can't, be successful in spying Drake May because he can't move as well, who is going to be able to, help the Seahawks defense make up for that? And a lot of people kind of forgot that Devin Witherspoon was actually the first guy they tried to kind of be that role that Nick Emenwari fills right now when he was drafted. They drafted him to sort of be a Kyle Hamilton, is kind of the name that everyone knows, so it's easy to reference it. But like the Kyle Hamilton type who plays all over the field. He plays some linebacker, he plays some corner, he plays some safety, he plays some, he plays some end, for goodness sake. And so Devin Witherspoon was the first guy Seattle drafted to try and have that, have that kind of guy be on their team. His skills in coverage kind of necessitated him to be more of a true corner over the course of the last couple years. And so they were looking for another guy, which is why they drafted Nick Emenwari to do it. And he's been great at it all year long. But Witherspoon was absolutely the go-to guy to fill that role. And he was incredible at filling it, like right from the beginning. The energy that he played with, his vision in his pass rush reps when he was coming from the outside to blitz, it was just incredible to watch, like a player like that. And then he had the pressure and he got his hand on the ball that led to the Nwosu pick and touchdown. Like he was everywhere. And for a guy who I've always liked in his time in Seattle for the last few years, and I really hope is in Seattle for a really long time. Like it was just really cool to see Witherspoon go off like that. And yeah, he had, the one sack, and he kind of did suffer that, kind of play everywhere and nowhere kind of, impact really, kind of thing. But, you could see his presence and you could feel his presence all over the field, and Drake May certainly felt it because every time he would come on a blitz, like he would always get right in Drake May's face, and it was really, really cool to watch. So yeah, I think Witherspoon had a case too. And if you were going to pick someone from the defense, it could have been him to give that MVP award to. And I would have liked it because he's such a cool dude. Like he's I came of age in an era of a Seahawks team that had a lot of talkers on it. This one doesn't, and he's one of them, one of the few that they have. And so it would have been nice to get him up on the mic and have him, talk after the Super Bowl win. But I think, Ken Walker totally deserved it. He was a very impactful player. A lot of impactful players for Seattle in this game, but yeah, so look, we'll wrap up our discussion of the Super Bowl with a little bit of a look forward, right? We kind of talked a little bit about where the Patriots go from here, right? But if you are the Patriots, where do you feel like you have the most room to improve, whether it's in the draft or by adding people in free agency that can get you not only back here, but over that hump?
I think for me, there's two clear spots, and I think it's spots that were a little bit overlooked because, again, Drake May playing like a MVP candidate did seem to cover some of these up with both his mobility and his arm talent. They have a clear lack of talent along their offensive line and at their receiving positions. And I think that Seattle really exposed them because it was like, they just couldn't do anything. The pass rush was winning even without the blitzes. And then when they did blitz, they were just consistently hitting home. And then the receivers, when they needed to be, were pretty blanketed. Obviously, Drake May had a fair share of plays he missed, but for the most part, I think you could argue, even to us, if something looks open, it might not be a true open receiver. I think a lot of defenses, especially someone with as much of a kind of mental advantage as Mike McDonald brings on the defensive side, may be setting traps that the average viewer would fall for. Because I saw a lot of people making comments of that too, of like, oh, these guys were wide open and Drake May just doesn't even throw the ball. There's no one near him. And it's like, well, actually, there's a safety roaming right over the top there. And maybe that's a hospital ball waiting. We don't know. And so I think they need to get some real receiving talent. Your number one guy can't be Stephon Diggs. He's not that dude anymore. Hunter Henry's fine. Austin Hooper is washed. Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas. It's just a bunch of guys who you're kind of like, who? That's really who we're rolling with here? And then the offensive line just got bullied all day, to be honest. And granted, Seattle bullied a lot of offensive lines, but if you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to be able to compete against a team like the Seahawks, right? Just because they did it to a lot of other teams doesn't mean you shouldn't aim to be better still.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I don't even know. I haven't really done a dive into who's available in free agency yet, except for I know Kenneth Walker is one, and I know Breece Hall is one, and I pay attention to those guys because the Broncos could use a running back. But in general, receiving upgrades, offensive line upgrades. I want to just jump to a mini defensive Will Campbell. He was terrible. There's no doubt about it. There's issues about his arm length and stuff. I don't know. We'll see. Discussion in the media about moving him to guard or something like that. Look, this was a top 5 pick. He obviously did not have the year he wanted to have, but I have watched the development of Garrett Bowles. He was pick 20 or something like that when he was picked, and he was awful for years. And now, this past year, he was the number 1 rated offensive lineman in All Pro. So there's time. Obviously, that's not what you want to see in the Super Bowl and all that. I'm not going to be overly concerned about Will Campbell moving forward. I'm interested to see his development, but I'm not ready to push the panic button on that. But overall, yes, offensive line upgrades would be very crucial for the Patriots if they want to be as successful next year.
Yeah, and I'll jump back in, kind of piggybacking off of that. I actually also believe that Will Campbell's going to be fine. I believe that he is a good player. When I say offensive line upgrades, it's more than just that. Like, it's more than just him. Like, they need help in a number of spots on that offensive line. And as someone who's been a part of a team who's had their fair share of great O-lines and their fair share of terrible ones, the offensive line is not an individual position. As much as you do play an individual position and have one-on-ones, there is a lot of communication. There is a lot of, picking up different stunts and twists and different blitz packages and the pre-snap calls that your center and quarterback are making. All of that goes into it. And so what we might see is like, oh, a left tackle, gets beat to the outside on a quick speed move, could simply be the fact that maybe his center called out that they're going to do actually like a shift right, and at the snap, they're going to take that initial step that way because they're predicting that there's going to be pressure. And that's the chess game that a lot of fans don't actually see, is the little minor things that are being called out. And that's what makes a defensive coordinator or a defensive coach like Mike McDonald so valuable. But it's also what makes, having a great, quarterback or having a great center who can make those correct calls equally important. And so I don't think Will Campbell's the issue. I think the short arm thing is so overblown. I think he's going to be fine. I think that they just need a better overall offensive line. And they also need to remember, Dallas said it earlier, a lot of teams look their worst when they play Seattle. Like, a lot of teams, looked a little foolish playing Seattle's defense this year. And think about the 49ers, one of the offensive juggernauts of the NFL the past few years. They put up a combined 12 points in their final two games against Seattle. Like, they just put up like jokes of performances. And so I really, in my opinion, I'm like, New England shouldn't be so disappointed in the way this turned out. Obviously disappointed to lose a game, and the Super Bowl at that. But as far as like the quality of their players, they still got good players. They just need to continue to develop, and this experience hopefully can help them. If you're a Patriots fan, I hope it doesn't, but if you're a Patriots fan, you just hope that they grow from it.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So finally, ending on the Seahawks here, and then we'll go to dingers and stingers. Is the Seahawks team one that you can see potentially getting back to the Super Bowl next year? Do they have it in them to be one of those teams that you think might be able to get back?
Yeah, certainly so. And obviously right now, I mean, if you look at the Vegas, betting odds, they are the current favorite to go back to the Super Bowl, but, always take Vegas odds with a grain of salt. They have a lot of impending free agents. I will say that. A lot of players on that defense and offense both are unrestricted free agents. With that being said, the Seahawks are also one of the teams with the most cap space. Should they want to run it back with a similar or identical starting roster? Probably they can. Guys like Reek Woolen, Julian Love, Kenneth Walker, Ricky Shaheed, amongst others, are all unrestricted free agents. So it'll be interesting to see if they choose to bring those guys back. But at the end of the day, I think, kind of the linchpin to all of this is the fact that when you have a quarterback who doesn't make top of market money, it allows you the flexibility to stay aggressive across the rest of the roster. And they have that. End of season totals may not have been as spectacular as some of the stretches looked for Sam. But at the end of the day, Sam was a good quarterback this year, one of the better quarterbacks this year. And again, he is the 18th highest paid quarterback as of right now. That will change, and he will fall lower on that list over the next 2 to 3 years as more quarterbacks get paid. And so you start to think like, okay, so this is a team with a number one defense. Their quarterback is going to be in the bottom third of quarterbacks being paid, but is certainly not the bottom third of quarterbacks quality. That's the recipe for success right there. Like that is the recipe. It's why teams love to chase that rookie contract for quarterbacks, because they typically can get a good quarterback that they don't have to pay top dollar for. The Seahawks found one in a way that is untraditional. And maybe Seahawks fans are a little bit nervous about that. I don't know how you feel about it, Dallas, given the recency of Geno Smith having a similar upward trajectory into an immediate downward trajectory. But I think Sam is younger, more talented, and better than Geno Smith. And so I don't believe he's going to face that same outcome.
Yeah, can the Seahawks get back to the Super Bowl? Absolutely. I mean, I think if we talked a year ago and you asked me about the Eagles, I would have said absolutely. Like, you just won the Super Bowl. There's no reason to think, as of right now, that you won't be able to do that again. But it's the NFL. It's a hard thing to do. Any year, it's hard to go back to back. I know the Chiefs just did it recently, but in general, it was a long time before that. Like, if I'm making a prediction right now, the Seahawks seem like the team that could do it, because look at what they looked like this whole year and throughout the playoffs. But NFL's a hard league, and it's a long season, a long off season. A lot can change. So it'd be foolish to make a prediction, but absolutely they can go back. Like, why wouldn't they be able to?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be very interested. I will say this to see, what members of the defense who are free agents they bring back. And also, taking a peek at their schedule for next year. It's not the schedule from this year. This year I'll be very interested to see how the defense looks against some of the offenses that they're going to have to play next year. Because this year they played against the likes of Max Brosmer, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray twice, which he might still get again next year. Who knows? But they played the Saints when Spencer Rattler was still quarterbacking for them over there. Phillip Rivers as well, although he is the one that gave him the most trouble of all the guys I mentioned. And so, but next year they're going to have to play Jalen Hurts, and they're going to have to play Dak Prescott, and they're going to have to play Patrick Mahomes, and they're going to have to play Bo Nix, and they're going to have to play Matt Stafford twice still. And so this is not this year's slate of quarterbacks. And also I will say, injury luck was very much on Seattle's side this year. So who knows what will happen in the next year. So, but yeah, I think if, from a Seahawks fan perspective, I say, why not? Why can't we go back? But I'll be interested to see how good the defense looks against some of the quarterbacks they're playing against next year. A lot more experience than the quarterbacks they faced this year. Okay, so let us end our show with Dingers and Stingers. This is our segment where we give one good thing a dinger and one bad thing a stinger from the week of sports. And so let us start with the bad and end with the good. So let's start with our stingers, and let's start with Drew.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch gears over to baseball for a second, as I'm known to do. It's the week of pitchers and catchers reporting, which is normally an exciting time, but I think every year is long enough that we kind of forget what that really entails. And we were reminded, as we always are, that it entails hearing about all the guys who are actually showing up injured. And there's an awful lot. I'm not going to list all of them. But, Francisco Lindor is on that list. Corbin Carroll is on that list. A lot of pitchers are on that list. And it's just a bummer. Luckily, our teams are, pretty well spared at the moment, I think. Nothing too crazy coming out of our camps right now, but it's just a brutal reminder of how a baseball season can go. And like when a young player, a young pitcher or whatever gets Tommy John, and then it's like, oh, there's a whole year and a half that we won't see this guy. It can be a long time. So that's my stinger for this week. It's just getting a flurry of reports of guys who won't be ready to start the season.
Yeah, dude. And crazy enough, with all those injuries that are the same injury, right? Isn't there like 3 or 4 guys who all have? Yeah, like the little bone right here, like such a random injury for them all to get within a few days of each other. But definitely a bummer to have so many guys starting a season injured. Like, not the way you want your sports seasons to start, even if it's your rival teams. I just feel like it's bad juju for the season. But my stinger for this week is based on the retirement of our longtime right tackle Rob Havenstein. This is the last remaining player from the St. Louis Rams, and he is officially retired, which means the end, truly the end of an era. I officially feel like I am middle aged, which is a tough break. It's just crazy. Like, the fact that the team I grew up with, I grew up a St. Louis Rams fan. That was the era I grew up in. The fact that there is no longer a St. Louis Ram is kind of crazy to me. And granted, you can make the argument like, oh, Jake McQuaid, dude, he's a long snapper. I wasn't looking at him like I never was. Rob Havenstein's been a multi-time captain, and he's been an all-pro, and he's been all these things for us. And it's just like, he's the last dude from that era, and it makes me sad. And not that I liked being a St. Louis Rams fan. It was a tough stretch of my life, both as a fan and as a personal thing. But like, it's just, I don't know. I've never felt as heavy of I've never felt so much heaviness with the retirement of a player that I actually didn't super love. Like, I like Rob Havenstein. I'm grateful for him, but his retirement almost hit harder than Aaron Donald's did. Like, his retirement has hit harder than a lot of players who I loved. And I think it's just because it is the first time I'm experiencing a true era dying. Like, I've experienced we've got new young people. That's like the true death of an era for me. So, it hit me pretty heavy this week. I can't lie.
I can't believe it's been that long since they moved to LA already.
It's been 2016. It's 10 years.
Right, I was in my head, I was like, wasn't Jared Goff's first year in St. Louis? No, dude, Jared Goff's been around forever in my head.
Yeah. Jared Goff was drafted. He was the first one.
Wow.
Yeah, well, the end of an era, truly. The St. Louis Rams are no more.
Officially a history book.
Yeah, may they reign forever, the Los Angeles Rams. But let's go to dingers and end on the good. And let's go back to Drew for your dinger this week, dear man.
Yeah, so, I'm not a Seahawks fan. I'm not. But Dallas is one of my very best friends. Matt is one of my very best friends. My younger brother, Luke, is one of my very best brothers. And they're Seahawks fans, right? Well, Matt's not a Seahawks fan, but his cousin was in the game. So he's a quasi-Seahawks fan. I'm very happy for these people. And I want to shout out Luke specifically because he's not here, and you two just talked at length about the Super Bowl. He lives in Seattle. He likes 4 professional sports teams that are in 4 different cities across America, which is kind of a funny thing about him. But he is a Seahawks fan. He always has been. And so I was happy for him, and he got to actually go to the parade yesterday. And so that's really cool. It's not an opportunity that too many people get, especially in my family where we all like teams that are not where we're from. But it was cool for him, and I was happy to see all the happiness around me. So I can be a good sport.
Yeah, he sent me some pics from the parade. It was dope. And also some pictures of him and our friend Jordan from the local news broadcast, catching them in the crowd because Jordan is amazingly tall and he's very easy to spot.
Dude, I knew he's we were on TV and I was like, I don't know who. It's so blurry. I wasn't sure who he was with. Okay, so that was Jordan. That's cool.
Yeah, it was our friend Jordan. He was there with him. But yeah, so yeah, happy happy to hear. And let's just continue the theme. Matt, what's your dinger for the week?
Dude, before I hop in, maybe we should get all the Seahawks fans on the pod for an episode. Bring them in, let them celebrate. Could be fun. There's a lot of fun ones, but yeah, my dinger for this week is, as Drew said, my cousin Sam. You know, that's my boy right there. He is a Super Bowl champion, and I have probably put in more work on the ground. Maybe the only people who could say more than me are his parents and, you know, sister and stuff. But like, I have spent my years since he's been drafted debating people about whether he is a true bust, debating people about whether he is a good quarterback. You know, it was one of those things, you know, usually if you have a someone you're related to in the NFL, you're super proud of that. You love to say it. People would laugh if I told them that my cousin was Sam. They're like, oh, that sucks. And it's like, dude, no. He was an NFL quarterback this whole time, and I fucking knew that he had it, and he was just in shit situations, and he was treated like shit, and he was always the bigger man. And just because he's quiet, just because he doesn't run his mouth, just because of all these things that we're used to seeing from people, you know, he's just been so undersold what he's capable of. And yet, you know, he talked about it a ton in his post-game stuff and pre-game, but like just the continual ability to believe in himself and the support he got from his parents and his sister. And, you know, I see on Instagram and all that, like how supportive they are of him. It's just cool to see this like full circle moment of like, we've spent so long trying to defend this man and telling people like just wait for him to get a real chance. And you know, we saw that last year with Minnesota, and then it was a tough end to that, and we were like, ooh, yikes, maybe, you know, but still a great year. But then to come to Seattle, to be the first quarterback to go back-to-back 14-win seasons with different teams, to be the first quarterback to do all these different things, and to cap it off and be a Super Bowl fucking champion. Like, it's insane. And it's still, you know, as many times as I've said it over the past few days, you know, with people texting me, people coming up to me and congratulating me as if I did anything. It's like, it still hasn't sunk in. Like, I believed I did my part. I feel like that one meme where it's like, I did my part. I did my part. I didn't do shit. Shout out Tim Robinson. Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, it's so cool. And forever, I can now say there is a Super Bowl champion, a starting quarterback, Super Bowl champion in my family. God forbid Sam ever lets me close enough to see the Lombardi Trophy or the ring. I will go feral. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like,
welcome to the club, man. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I'm sure you felt that way before.
Joe Flacco is my father.
Surprise. Yeah, dude, it's so cool. It's so crazy. Like, I truly don't really have words for it yet. I'm not sure that I fully processed it. Like, it's crazy how close to home the Super Bowl hit. And I felt it for the first time watching the game. Like, as he was coming out in that first drive, I was like, holy shit, that's Sam playing in the Super Bowl. Like, our childhood dream of playing in the Super Bowl. He's there on my TV right now doing it. And it was just so cool. And then to see him win, and you know, I got to see these pictures of his dad in the crowd after the game, and he's screaming, he's doing all this stuff, and it's just like, it's crazy. These are people that I've known since I was an infant, and to see them celebrating at a Super Bowl, to see them celebrating Sam at the Super Bowl, to see just that whole thing, like it was just one of the coolest things. So very grateful that I got to experience something like that. I am such a passionate football fan, and so for something like that to happen so close to me, I feel very honored.
Totally. Totally. Well, My thanks for as much as we were able to praise Seattle on this episode. My thanks, man. It's great. And many thanks to Sam Darnold for sure from me. Even though I didn't deserve it, but many thanks to him. But that'll do for this week's episode, our football episode of Dingers and Stingers. Check out our baseball episode. Also from this week, we previewed the NL East. Division previews are starting for baseball. Hello. It's on. And so go check that out if you want to hear us dive a little deep into that division. We'll continue that going forward on those shows, so make sure you stay tuned. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube where you are watching this. You can make sure to like this video, share it around. You can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Instagram at Dingers and Stingers. And you can listen to us on Spotify. If you prefer audio only, our episodes drop there as well. So plenty of ways to, get our podcast into your world and into the world of those who you think might like it. Share it around and, enjoy however you listen. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the Super Bowl. Let us know if we missed any big topics, anything like that. Let us know what you think about Patriots and the Seahawks going forward. What you see at their outlook for them. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, take care. Remember, 12 is 1. The power of 12 is 1. Won the Super Bowl. And until next time, we will see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.